Yeah, go on,
You
Christine.
know, we were talking about the fact that, you know, with this offer for young people, and the amount of money that people are paying, that employers might take the learners on as apprentices just for the incentive.
Yeah.
And as I was saying, you know, it's really important that the provider drives that and makes sure that the apprentice gets a good experience, and that the employer recognizes the value of that person in their business, because the employer has to take a key role in endpoint assessment. And so it's not just to get somebody in and fill the job. That might be the initial thing, but the provider can make that a better experience and engineer that, and that'll strengthen their relationship with the employer and what they can then promote out in the sector. But that is a completely different space, and that all comes down to recruitment. And I've seen too much of just bums on seats. I mean, I used to go to recruitment meetings and try and convince them how important maths and English was, and that they couldn't say, oh, never mind, you don't need to worry too much about that, you know, we'll sort that out, don't worry, you know. God, it's a vital thing.
Yeah.
That's definitely changed, though, isn't it? The focus on maths and English now. I think it's one of those things that's, well, I don't know, do you think it's changed? Do you think the focus has changed? No. That's interesting.
I think the same focus has been there, and I think a lot of organisations are paying lip service to it, and good providers are starting to think about it in a more holistic way. But I still don't think, I would say in a huge percentage of employers, in a huge percentage of providers, and I'm going to be generous and say maybe 25% of them are on board with this, what we called years ago the whole organisation approach. And it was such a shame that went off the radar, you know, when there was all this change with the QIA and Skills Improvement Agency and all that kind of shifted. The focus went away from that whole organisation approach, and that's really what's needed. And the new Common Inspection and Framework, well, it's not now, it's the Education Inspection Framework, but that the still focus is still with maths and English. And as long as we're so poor in the league tables, it's not going to go away. And we've got now, you know, I've got this real, I don't know what to call it, but I've got this really awful feeling about what's happened with schools. And what now is going to drop out the other side. You know,
that's a good point.
There's another OECD next year, and the young people that are going to be assessed next year, and I know it's a worldwide thing, so our rankings might not change that much, but in real terms, I just feel that the government should put out all children back a year and let them do this year again, so that they don't lose, because they've lost about a year, I think.
Yeah, by the time they go back, they definitely have.
Yeah, because it's that slippage as well, isn't it? You know, they might have had from September till March, but because they've not had proper schooling, then, you know, it's slipping back, and it breaks my heart. It really does. There's one young lad that I'm tutoring online because his parents were desperate. I'm doing him twice a week now.
What, maths and English?
Well, yes, allegedly. So at the minute, I'm on science and history as well.
Oh, wow. I didn't realise you were a science teacher, Christine.
I'm not. But my theory was, I'm an adult, he's a child, he's got to interpret the information. And I know how to interpret information. I know how to answer questions. Do you know what I mean? So I'm just like transferring what I do know to a subject that I don't know, and helping him to work through it. But it's frightening, and that's just one child, but I know it's throughout.
But don't you think, Christine, in the going back to the apprenticeship sector just for a minute, I think I you know, from previous roles I've done as well, people are just treating it as it's something that's really hard. Now, my maths and English is not great, but I still know that if you're talking to a patient, or if you're working in a store, how you can embed that maths. But people are thinking about it too hard. You know, and I've spoke to tutors and trainers before and said, so what you just did there was maths, and they're just like, no, it wasn't. Yes, it was, and you are naturally embedding that, but you don't realise you're doing it.
No.
And it's like you said though, Christine, as people that are in our positions and pushing the curriculum and what people need to do, we feel that we need to put something in there to give them the opportunity to take advantage of that. But actually, if some of them actually thought about what they were doing, they're actually doing it already. They're just not, same old story, they're not evidencing it, they're not evidencing it correctly.
It's not just about the evidence thing, though, I don't think, Sarah. Do you know, I came onto this call today and I thought, I'm not going to say very much because I end up getting on soapboxes. And then,
don't be silly, Christine. Don't be silly.
That's why I'm sorry. I do apologise, but no, why
don't apologise. That's what we love about you. Don't apologise.
Oh, bless you. So I think one of the things, have I told you the story about the standardization observation training that I was doing with some observers? Have I told you this story?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think I've heard it.
Well, there was, because I was Maths and English Development Manager in the latter part of where I was in my last job. And so everybody in the organisation saw me as the Maths and English expert. Although I've got more skills than that, they saw me as the Maths and English expert. So we sat down, I was the lead for functional skills, and all the observers across all the different vocational areas were doing this standardization training, which was coming out of the quality team, and now as part of the quality team. So what we had to do was, it had been recognised through lots of observations that maths and English were not being integrated as much as they needed to be, and the people that were observing were not picking that up and feeding it back. So that's what this standardisation was all about. So we had a video of a nail service, and we had to all watch it and then feedback on what maths and English we saw in this nail service. So the lady,
that's a good exercise. That's a good way to do it.
Yeah, it did work really well. So the lady who was head of health and social care, she said, I'm going to sit next to you, she said, and because we were doing it in pairs. She said, I'm going to sit next to you, she said, because I can find the English, but I can't find maths. So I was like, right, yeah, okay. And which was a kind of a normal scenario. It's like, who grabbed me first kind of thing, you know. So we sat down and we went through this exercise and we watched the video clip, and it was this young girl who was doing a service on one of the apprentices, and there were apprentices around her that were watching and everything, and we had to do the thing. And she said, when it finished, she said, right, I can see the English, but she said, I can't see any maths at all. So I said to her, right, okay, well, you tell me what the English is. So she went through the English and and I picked up a couple of little bits. And I think now with endpoint assessment, it's even more important that we can celebrate that English so that the learners do have that ability to be able to communicate effectively and put across the information that they need in a confident way. So I think this is a big bit that we can draw out of the apprenticeships, Sarah, in that it's the skills that people are using that they take for granted. Yeah. When somebody opens their mouth, they just, because people are not actually taught to speak properly. I mean, I do it with some of my students. I correct them and help them to build their diction and grammar and the way they sort of present information. But I don't think it's generally done. People just get marked and told what they've done wrong. They're not told how to improve. So anyway, she got all the English across and everything. And then she said, I can't see any maths at all. And I said, oh, really? She said, I suppose you've got loads, don't you? And I said, yeah, I've got quite a bit. Yeah. She said, all right then, come on then. So I said, well, she talked about the temperature in the room and was the client comfortable? Maths, temperature. Because you've got degrees centigrade and Fahrenheit, and what's the right temperature and how do you adjust it? Oh, never thought of that.
That would never have crossed my mind, Christine. So that's so fascinating, actually.
Yeah, so she talked about temperature, and then she said, so she painted the girls' nails and she put them under the thing to heat up. So that would have been at a temperature as well, and she'd have to make sure that that's at the right temperature. And it was under there for a certain amount of time. time. And she would need to know how many times that needs to go underneath there in order to be able to complete the whole service. Multiplication. She's using product, so she's got so many clients in a day. She would need to know how much product that she's actually going to be using. So she'd have to do some measurement on the things that she's using in order to know that she can service her clients. She'd also need to know what stock levels she's got to make sure that she can service the clients that she's got for the rest of the week or until she can do her next order. She needs to know how much that product costs. So she needs to work out how much her time and how much she charges her clients in order to be able to make a profit, percentage, addition, subtraction. She would also need to know how long. Are you bored yet? She would also need to know.
Great.
I was going to say, I find it really interesting, actually.
How long a service takes overall, so that she can schedule her day and know when to book clients in and make sure that she can take time out and everything as well, so that she can have a meal and she can have a rest breaks and all the rest of it. So that's scheduling and problem solving and planning. And those are just the things I can remember off the top of my head. Well, this woman sat there gobsmacked. And she said, I never thought of it like that. But these are the skills that we use every day, you know. And then a week later, she pulled me in the corridor and she said, you know, I can see maths everywhere now. And it's everywhere. You know, and like kids will say, well, when do I use maths? Well, how did you get here? Right, look, I got here on the bus. Okay, so you looked at a timetable. How did you know what time the bus was going? How did you get to the bus stop on time? Well, I knew that it took me X amount of time to get from home to get to the bus stop. Well, how did you know to leave home on time? Well, I knew it took me X amount of time to get up and get dressed and and it's all scheduling, it's all problem solving. It's what people are doing all the time. And I think what happens is when you do something all the time, you forget that you're using it. And I believe part of the job of an assessor or a tutor or an educator or whatever you want to call them now is to help people recognize the skills that they're using anyway and see how they can improve them.
And how they transfer.
Absolutely. Okay, I'll shut up
now. The amount of people that say, you know, I'm not very good at maths or I'm not very good at English, and you know, even in the setting I'm in now, but they're using it all the time. They're taking measurements. The other day I was observing one of the learners, and she had to work out the how much fluid somebody had passed, but the person was incontinent. So what they weighed the incontinence material before and after, and then had to take it away. And I was just like,
ingenious.
You've just done maths. You've just done maths. And she was like, I said, but you have, because you had to work it out and you had to use, you know, all these, and you used the equipment and everything else. So
and also problem solving.
Because
they'd worked out how to get what they wanted, and that problem and I think this is why, for me, I was really disappointed when they were first bringing functional skills in, and originally anyone who was going to get an A star to C in GCSEs had to get a level 2 functional skills first. If they didn't get the level 2 functional skill, they weren't going to be allowed to get that A star to C. And they removed that. And that's because the schools put them under pressure, because the kids can't problem solve. They're not taught to problem solve. The teachers can't problem solve. And that's another issue as well that I'll come back to in a second. But that is the core of it. It's the ability to use maths. And really, for me, maths and English, it's like passing your driving test. You don't learn to drive until you are on the road. You don't start to use maths and English properly until you leave school. And it's a life skill that we never stop developing. You know, if you put my skills from maths was my best subject, but I couldn't get my head around algebra. I was in my 40s before I could get my head around algebra, because I kept coming back to it. And I think it's that kind of thing. And I think one of the things, and that's the thing I meant I'll come back to it, where people feel that their own maths and English is maybe not as secure as they think it needs to be, which is rubbish. They then have this barrier. I'm no good at maths and English, and they communicate that barrier to their learners.
Yeah.
And they then do this, oh, I'm not very good at maths either, so we'll just leave that. Or
Seen as a bolt-on, isn't it?
Yeah. Instead of recognizing where the maths and English is and bringing it to life in real contexts, their confidence will grow with it, because they'll recognize how much they're actually using things that they don't think are that important, but also it brings it to life for the learners, and it helps them to recognize the importance of it. And it's just so vital. I've trained so many vocational tutors to change that opinion.
Really important point.
What I've done, Christine, is I've changed the terminology, because where our apprentices come in and they have to have their maths and English, it's just because of the environment, it's a prerequisite. So you can imagine maths and English is like, oh, we don't need to do it. So I've changed it now and brought it in with things like, the whole wider curriculum, and I call it life skills.
Absolutely.
So when we talk about what needs to be covered and things, I don't say you need to cover maths and English at every visit, or I call it life skills. So what are the life skills that have been embedded during your visit today, during your workshop or whatever, and try to do it that way, because like you say, it's the skills that they're using, and when it comes to it, let's be honest, nobody will sit there and do algebra necessarily.
Other than Christine.
But we will need to know the scenario, like I talked about the incontinence, or where I used to work, they used to talk about the amount of medication or the amount of tablets that somebody was taking, whether it was in tablet form or liquid form, and what the strength was. And we need to be getting that message across better, in the fact that it's skills that they're using to do their job, and skills they're using to live their life, rather than ticking a box and maths.
But what's it really interesting, Sarah, you say, when do people use algebra? All the time.
Go on then.
If you've got
challenge.
All algebra is replacing numbers for letters, for a repeat process. So if you've got 30 residents in a nursing home and you need a cup of tea 3 times a day to those residents, you've got 30 times 3 for the, and that's a form of algebra. If you're making sandwiches for your children and you use 2 pieces of bread, an apple, a banana and a biscuit in their box, and you've got 2 children and 2 more children stay, you just multiply it up by the principles or by whatever it is. So we naturally use algebra. Create a area, length times width. It's a formula. It's algebra. We just use it, but because the letters, people will do the operations naturally, but put the letters in there instead, or show them X and Y, and people freak out. But actually it could be apples and pears. It can be anything, and it's that, I think it's that whole mindset, which is going back to what I was saying about this whole organizational approach. And if everybody understands the value of maths and English, and I'm going to stretch that now, because it's digital skills as well now, because that's sort of live from August, and that's got the same ranking, and I never understood why they took it off the adult funding anyway, but it's back there. So it's maths, English and technology use now, digital skills.
It has to be.
Absolutely has to be. And up there as well for me, I think things like customer service, that's another essential.
Relationship skills, influencing, community,
all those softer skills. And like you're saying, the influencing and communication, that's a form of English. Because you need to be persuasive, you need to listen well, you need to communicate well, and it's all English.
It's so funny, isn't it? Because I'm definitely one of those people that, very confident about lots of stuff, but I would never say that I'm strong on maths. I've got a degree, I've got a science degree, and I used maths as part of that, but it's just it was isolated at the time. And I remember coming in, first couple of weeks at university, freshers fair, and you get thrown a credit card from Barclays and you get your student loan thrown at you. I didn't know how to manage money. I didn't know about debt. I didn't know about overdrafts. I didn't know how things worked, how banks worked, when I needed to pay stuff back, interest rates on loans and credit cards. It's a shame that this stuff isn't put into context like that, like you would do in an apprenticeship, because I could have done with understanding what an APR on a credit card. So whether I get a credit card or not when I'm a student, I didn't care at the time, as I was a student, first time away from home, and it was all fun and games. But going back to your point around teaching, Christine, if it was taught in that functional skills way, you know, let's get ready for uni, and actually this could happen at uni, and you need to be able to have these skills to manage your bills because you're living away for the first time. You don't know what your water payment's going to be, and split that by 6 people in the house that you're house sharing with, and you don't get taught any of that stuff. You have to figure it out as you go along.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think one of the things as well, and that's a beautiful example, Erica, if you think about it, we get this wave of young people that come out of school that don't have those skills, and they move slowly into the workforce, and they're never given those skills. And a lot of people just get by, and they don't really understand it all. And that's why, going back to what I was saying, I've got this really awful feeling, and about, you know, the OECD and the focus of maths and English.
What's OECD, Christine? What's that? What's that?
Oh God!
Or what is it?
It's 76, I think, last time, countries throughout the world.
Okay.
That it's the PISA assessments.
So we benchmark ourselves against everybody else.
Yes. So it's 15-year-olds. And then there's a series of tests that are done with these 15-year-olds: reading, problem solving, maths,
like SATs,
science,
those kind of things.
Yes, but it's an international thing.
Okay.
And then scores are given based on the results of this, and then everybody is ranked. And there's no hard and fast scoring, and the ranking comes out depending on different countries. But countries that are less affluent, if you want, than the UK are higher up the pecking order than we are. We sit very close around countries like the United States and Australia and stuff like that. But countries like Estonia is higher than we are. Singapore is right up there.
I reckon China, Korea, all those type of East Asian countries, they're very disciplined around all this, aren't they?
Absolutely. And they prioritize education and schooling, but the systems they use are very different than ours. They use more of a spiral system of education. So it's like that building blocks, whereas what we tend to do in this country, but I think it is changing. There is more of a shift, certainly around maths, and more of this mastery and making sure that the building bricks are in place. But again, we've got this vast working population that don't have all this confidence, and so yes, things are starting to move through, but the impact on the workforce is not going to be for probably several generations, and it's a little bit worrying. But it's that, you know, if you don't have the basics, so if you don't understand fractions, decimals and percentages securely, the rest all kind of falls apart. If you're not confident with multiplication and division, then there's so much you can't do. But when you can put those things in place, then things just are like, you know, oh my God. And it's quite simplistic, because I think for me, I've had a few real like, oh my God moments, you know, as I was 43 when I came into formal education, with quite a sort of varied occupational background behind me before then. And I kind of drifted into it. And if you like, probably found my passion and found my niche. And I was working with a lady in Salford Royal Hospital who had to do her maths she had to get a level 2 maths in order to be able to move on to a nursing qualification that she wanted to do. But she also wanted to be better at her maths because she wanted to help her grandchildren with their maths, and she didn't want to feel stupid. So we sat down and I started working with her, and I got a feel of what she didn't feel comfortable with. And to be honest, one of the commons is fractions. People really seem to struggle with fractions, decimals and percentages, and the relationship between them. So we sat down going through fractions and all the rest of it. And I would say this lady was probably in her late 50s, and we were going through, I was taking her through the different things and helping her to understand that the bottom part of the fraction, the denominator, the divider, the down part of the fraction, that's how many shares we split things into and all that malarkey and stuff. And going through all of that, and we got to the end, and I said to her, okay. And she sat there for a minute, and then she said, is that it? And I said to her, yeah, basically. Do you want me to make it more complicated? She said, no. And she was so angry. So angry. She said, why could somebody not have taught me that years ago? Because I have gone through my whole life thinking that fractions was something that I would never get my head around. And I have lost all this time thinking I was bad at maths.
Oh, bless her.
Just by somebody showing me what you've shown me in that time, that could have made such a difference for me. She was so cross. And that made me then realise the duty of care that we have to the people we work with. And so if we don't help our learners to get over these barriers with maths and English, I'm off again, aren't I?
But do you know what's going through my head? I don't know about you, Sarah, but I'm absolutely engrossed. You should, and you probably do this already.
I was on mute, yeah.
But you should do these masterclasses. Yeah. You should be advertising this stuff and making, because this is brilliant. This is like, and you've got such a nice style.
Erica, I was just sitting here thinking, I need Christine to do something around our environment for our
Absolutely.
It's not that hard.
No,
but the messages that you're landing around mindset, around clarity, simplicity, relevance, that's the stuff that people don't get, I think. And that's you telling those kind of stories. I'm already thinking, oh God, I didn't think I could do that, but I think I can do that now, actually. I'm already in that space.
The penny will just drop.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, people will flourish with it. I agree with you, Erica. I need you, Christine.
Christine, I think
listen, that's why I do part of what I do.
2 weeks' time on this call should go over to you as a bit of a taster masterclass, math and English masterclass. What do you reckon?
Oh my God.
Bit of a showcase, bit of a kind of, this is, and I'm not saying give all your secrets away, absolutely not. But what I'm saying is it might be a good opportunity for people to understand the benefit that you can bring. Have a think about it, let me know.
There's a challenge.
I put you on the spot now, haven't I?
You have. I mean, I have to say, what you've both said is not something, I have heard it before, you know, but I think, and you're absolutely right, Erica, but I think it's, how do I package it and how do I put it across? Because it's one of those things, because it's become my passion, it just happens to come out naturally. You know, and it's like I've said before, just wind me up and off I go.
But Christine, I think Erica's right. If we can get as many people as, you know, to really try and encourage people to come on the call next time, it'll go through word of mouth and to begin with, and then because there's such a need for it at the moment, and also we need to be, you know, we've spoke Erica, but we need to be thinking more out the box of how we can get to our learners and how we can support them in these times, even though we're supposed to be coming out of it. It's not, people are still struggling with that, and the whole mindset starts the cogs going of how we can do things, and then you put that together with the digital piece, and then you're just like, oh, I think I agree with you, Erica.
I've just plucked that out of the air and thrown that at you, Christine, and I'm very aware that might not be right. But have a think about it and drop me a message, because that could be a really nice packaged product. Like Sarah said, that there's absolute need for completely.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
But you mean, do you mean along a similar kind of line to what we did with the guy on flourishing and stuff like that? Are you thinking you want?
From Gen Healthy Mind.
Yes,
So just a bit of a showcase. You have slides, don't have slides. It's up to you. Have a video, don't have a video. Just have a think about, you know, as a bit of a taster, so people can understand what it is that you could offer. We don't need to make it salesy. We don't need to make it pushy, but that often, if you do that piece and test it with this group, nothing's stopping you advertising that on LinkedIn and then other apprenticeship groups and stuff, because that's exactly what I did with the open courses, the virtual classrooms. That's how we fill those sessions. So,
well, to be honest, this is part of what I was thinking, or the shift that I'm trying to make anyway, in that where I have been doing work for other people when they come to me and if they say, can you do X, Y, and Z? I'm relying on other people giving me the work. So what I'm trying to do now is develop my own courses and put them onto my website and push them out that way, so that people can access them through that way. So yeah, it's yes, I'll do it. I'm up for a challenge.
Are you sure? Before I go all over LinkedIn going, come and get Christine's Maths and English Masterclass.
Christine, do you know what else I think, you know, we've all got a structure of how we deliver these, you know, like you were saying, Erica, masterclasses, but the whole open forum to be able to have that opportunity to talk and sort of for that to land in somebody's mind, I think is equally important, because people talking it through and then all of a sudden they're just like, oh. So I think, you know, yeah, that's a really good opportunity.
It might be, I think, maybe what do you think about possibly a bit of a surgery then? What maths and English challenges do people think? Because to be honest, you know, I think if somebody comes with a particular challenge around maths and English, I'll be able to give them something, or some, even off the cuff, you know, and that might flow more naturally and might appeal to people a bit more, rather than them saying, or me just putting together what I think. If people are coming to me, so like Sarah, if you said about some of the challenges that you're facing, so you might come with something like, you know, how do I get my tutors to think more positively around integrating maths and English? You know, and if people post some of those in advance, then it'll give me a little bit of time to sort of put something a bit more polished together. But even if you just threw that at me, then sorry, it's the cat. She's making a strange noise. You can't hear it because I got my headset on, but she started making very strange noise.
I love you to bits, Christine. You make me laugh.
Sorry.
No, don't ever apologise. Oh my God, I think you're brilliant.
I shut when I'm doing my webinars, I shut the office door so she can't get in there. But it was a very loud noise that she was making. So anyway, I don't know if she's fighting or something. She's a little bit of a feisty. So sorry, going back, Sarah, I would say to you, the approach that I would take is helping them to recognise maths and English that they are using all the time, and how they've maybe developed from when they left school, and how things have improved, and how their mindset is not positive around maths and English, but you're using it all the time. So how much better would you have been if you'd have been more aware of having those skills and the development that you were going down? Because we don't always recognise, unless you draw a line in the sand at this is where I am now, and then you measure where you are in a month, in 6 months or whatever, and you do some reflection on that, where you are in the future becomes the norm, and you don't see where you've come from.
Okay, so let's do that then. So when I put the recording for today into the group, I'll say that we'd like to focus next, so 2 weeks time, because we're going to go fortnightly now, I think, aren't we? So, you know, we'd like to offer, you know, Christine support.
On a plate.
Offer up Christine. But kind of a drop in, and I think the queries will probably be, like you said, kind of, how do I approach this with my tutors? How do I embed this into my strategy? How do I write about this in the EIF? How do I measure impact? How do I look at, you know, implementation in terms of my curriculum? you know, how do I, rather than the actual detail of it, it will probably be that kind of slightly higher level stuff.
Yeah, a bit like a surgery. No,
Yeah.
I'm fine with all of that because, I mean, I know you don't know too much about what I've done, but so I've been in Ofsted inspections. I did 4 in 5 years, and I've written Maths and English strategy. I've supported staff to be able to work with their learners. I've developed programs. You know, so I've done all these kind of things. So I can't imagine that there's anything that's going to come up that I can't field in some way, shape, or form. I was just checking my diary there for that 22nd, and it's fine.
Yeah, before we go out and advertise it.
Yeah, before you put me out for sale.
I feel like your pimp, Christine.
Okay. And we're still recording.
We are still recording. But no, I think as we start to get into this new normal, whatever we call it, and, you know, some of us are remote, some of us aren't remote, some, like you said, Sarah, in the office 1 day a week, you know, people are still feeling disrupted, and probably will do as long as this virus is going to be around, which is definitely going to be the next year, the next 2 years. So I think anything we can give people that helps them to think around what does that mean, how can I do that in a different way, would be appreciated by the group, I think, personally.
Yeah. And I think, you know, because people, not just assessors, but also the apprentices have got used to working in a different way, then, you know, they've maybe been communicating more by things like email and stuff like that. And email have now become the new form of letters, and they need to have a proper structure. And so things like text speak and stuff like that is not appropriate in an email. And so there's a lot of things that I think are quick fixes that people can miss tricks with. So yeah, I think we can hopefully we can give some significant value to people, and I'll think of some things anyway. If people don't come up with things that they'd like to sort of cover, I can come up with some things that are normal challenges that get raised.
Even to the point where, you know, we know providers are going to have a bunch of apprentices that are being made redundant. You know that, you know, they reckon about 1/3 of the workforce, don't they, is going to go. So even if it's like you said, Christine, writing a proper cover letter, so our tutors know how to help apprentices write a proper cover letter. I don't know how to write a proper cover letter. I just chuck the CV in and stuff, and I never write a cover letter. But actually, people need to know these skills to be able to get back into the workforce, don't they? So.
And this is where I think tutors can have a really positive impact with the apprentices. And for me, I see it as, you know, it's another one of those conversations where I've had with assessors who were kicking against this, you know, like, I'm not a teacher. I didn't come into assessing to be
I'm not a maths teacher. I've heard that so many times.
Any kind of teacher. I'm not a teacher, you know, I'm an assessor, I'm not a teacher. And so then, you know, one of the comments that I throw back for that one is, okay, so what do you think that teaching is? And well, it's when somebody gets some information. Okay, so actually I've been teaching because, without meaning to, I've put some information into the space, and you've both got something more than before. So that's teaching. And I think any exchange where you give some information to another person and they go away knowing more than they did before, that's teaching. And we all do it all the time. It's natural.
Good. Hasn't that conversation flown?
Yeah,
that's an hour. That's an hour that we've put the wheels to right around maths and English, and that's what I love about this platform. We don't always have a strict agenda, and I think some people in the group struggle with that a little bit sometimes. But actually, the fact that we've had such a quality conversation that's going to like lead onto something else, it's going to support people. I think that's exactly what this group's around, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's finding those things that we need to do and how we need to do it to help each other. I think it's really good.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I think is great about this group is that there is such an eclectic mix, and it's really useful to hear different people's viewpoints. And I think really at the end of the day, that's what good networking is all about, isn't it? And I think You know, one of the things that I used to get the most out of was the regional network meetings that the Key Skill Support Programme used to do. And then, of course, funding got dried up and one thing and another. And all those kind of networks have kind of disappeared and faded into the background. But people need to be able to bounce those ideas and know what's going on in different places. And I think you draw from different people. And I think that's what makes this group so vital, really. It's a shame that numbers have dropped off a little bit over the last couple of weeks. But
yeah, I think it's correlated with people going back into their normal schedule and work and stuff, isn't it? But again, if we've got something really solid like we will do with this, I think this will attract quite a lot of attention.
Yeah, likewise, Erica, maybe we should do another one in a couple of weeks around maybe following on from that about the digital space and maybe do some kind of surgery around that as well, because I think that's an ongoing piece that I think we'll need to keep revisiting, and it's going to be a big challenge for a lot of people, because my personal opinion is that when people who've been working at home and they've been working remotely, if it's not become natural to them and they don't feel the benefit of it, when they go back to the way the face-to-face, I think they'll just lose all that. And some of the gains of the digital and some of the positives that could have been capitalized on, while businesses are trying to, providers are trying to get back on track with recruitment and new learners coming on board and sorting out all the stuff that's not been happening as it should have been happening. And when they're trying to get back to their day-to-day business, they won't necessarily be keeping their eye on what the assessors are doing on the ground.
Yeah.
And the assessors could slip back into the way they used to do things because that's where they were comfortable, and lose some of the gains that could potentially happen with all this like digital progress, because I just think it's so vital. And if that does kind of go off the radar, when the providers then get more secure again with what they're doing and they start looking at being more cost effective and stuff like that, and they then try and force those assessors to go back to working that way, then there's that shift again that they're going to have to maybe make that another change that's not going to sit well with a lot of people. And so this is a good opportunity to be able to ease that into something that's working really well.
Excellent. Good conversation, guys. So we're just over 11 o'clock, so that's our time done. And I'll thank you. I think, again, just love the way the conversations just grow arms and legs, don't they? And it's just nice to touch base with you guys as well. So
yeah,
I've missed you over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, we missed you as well. It's just smiling face. But, again, massive well done on getting that contract.
Thank you.
That is, it's really, it's great to hear.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Great. Well, 2 weeks, Christine. We'll leave you to it, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
With a new haircut.
With a new haircut. Yeah, looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing the pictures as well.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
On Friday. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, fab. Nice to see you, Sarah.
See you later. Cheers.
Take care, Christine. Thanks, guys.
Have a great week.
Bye.